Hey folks, I'm going to make a video today completely different than any of my other videos. It has nothing to do with reloading and it has nothing to do with medical stuff. I'm going to talk a little bit today about food preparation, prepping food, storing food. If it's something that doesn't interest you, skip on. I'll have another reloading video or medical video up soon. But I was having a discussion with a friend of mine the other day about prepping and storing some food because I was concerned about shortages and stuff, and said you need to put some food back. And he was saying he really didn't have any experience with that. And so we had a conversation about it, and he was talking about how much knowledge I had in the area. I don't really feel like I have that much, but I guess I've been doing this for so many years. I've been a prepper pretty much all my life, as long as I can remember, before I ever heard the term prepper. And so I guess I have picked up some stuff over the years. So I thought I'm going to make this video. I've got some stuff over here I'm going to be storing. I'm going to show you how I'm storing it, what I'm doing. And I'm not saying you have to do the same thing as me. You might do a lot better job than me. You might have a lot more stuff stored than I do. I'm just going to show you what I do. So if it helps you, great. If it doesn't, well, I understand that. But let's get started. I know a lot of people store food in different ways. And they're storing them for different lengths of time. I'm not storing food for 20 or 30 years. When I was younger, I may have tried to do that. I don't think we got 20 or 30 years before I'm going to need this. My storage, most of this stuff is more like 2 to 5 years. But I keep food stored and I rotate it. About once a year I go through it, I check it. Stuff's starting to get out of date, I go ahead and eat it, and I put fresh stuff in. So I don't need it to last for 20 years. If it can last for 2 to 5 years, I'm pretty happy with that. But also there's a cost factor. I try not to spend too much money. I've got a lot of things to spend money on, ammo and guns and just living, gas and stuff. So I buy our food that we eat, and then I buy a little bit extra here and there and put it back. I don't get crazy, but I want to have a store of food. I'd love to have a year's worth of food in this house. I don't. Maybe stretching it, maybe 6 months, probably more like 3 or 4 months. But I'm always adding. I'm always trying to get better at it. So, but I was just going to show you a few things I've done. I've got this tote that I'm working on filling up today. I store a lot of food in like totes and things like that, mainly so I can stay married, because my wife gets tired of me having the cabinets so stuffed you can't move. And I do have my freezer full, but I don't count on that, because if things get bad, I'll count on the power going out, and you're going to lose all that in a few days. So I try to do more canned stuff that's being kept at a consistent, just like room temperature. But after 4th of July this year, our local dollar store had these styrofoam coolers for sale, and they were $2.50. And right after the 4th, they had a half off sale, so they were selling for $1.25. So I bought a number of these and filled these with food, and then I went around and taped them up tight with duct tape and sealed them up. And I store those in the back room of the house in a closet out of sight, stacked up on top of each other. It's a pretty handy, good way to store food out of the way, and it's sealed up nice and tight, and a good way to keep it, I think, for very little bit of money. So that's what I'm doing with that. I bought this tote fairly cheap at Rural King. I'm going to do the same thing with it. I'm going to fill this up, put the lid on it, seal it with some real good duct tape, seal it up tight, put it in the back room. I store them in the house. I have thought about storing some outside in my shed. It's not temperature controlled. Probably not ideal. Eventually, I may get to that where I have to put some, because my wife's not going to let me fill the living room with food. And I'll just have to deal with that. Some of the stuff may not last as long, but if I can seal it up good and tight and keep vermin out and stuff, it should be all right. But I'm going to clear some of this off. And I went shopping today, picked up a few little groceries, some stuff for my lunch, and I went ahead and picked up some prepping stuff I'm going to be adding to this bin. So I just want to show you some of the stuff that I'm stocking away and let you know why I made those choices. So stay tuned. All right, when I'm packing a tote with food to store it away, I personally don't pack all the same thing in one tote. You could do that. You could have a tote full of canned food, another one full of rice or beans or something. I put a mix in every one, and that way I look at it. If we need food, I can bring out the tote, open it up, and we have enough to eat for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever, depends on what's in the tote. And then if I need more, go and open another tote. So it's totally up to you how you want to do it. That's just the way I do it. So I've got some stuff in here, and I've got some stuff I'm gonna add, and I just want to show you some examples of stuff and why I made the choices that I've made. And if you've got other choices and you've got other ideas, I'm open to hear them. I'm not perfect. Like I said, I've been doing this for a lot of years. This has worked for us so far, but none of us have really been tested yet. So I'm certainly open to suggestions. But I understand, I've just found a lot of comments about Mylar bags and vacuum sealing and using nitrogen in the bags to remove all the oxygen and oxygen absorbers and Lord, I don't remember, diatomaceous earth and all. I know about all that stuff. You don't have to tell me about it. But like I said, you can go buy freeze-dried foods, like some company like Mountain House or something, and buy a year's worth of food and stuff. And if that's the way you want to go, that's great. A lot of my friends are really more on fixed incomes, and they really just can't afford to just go out and buy all that stuff. So they're looking at stuff that they can buy at their local grocery store and can just store away for a while, and a little bit more cost saving. So that's kind of the way I work. So let's just get into it. So your staple foods that you just can't get enough of, I think, to store back are going to be your beans and rice. Very good filling foods that go a long way. I've got an 8-pound bag of beans in here. I'm not going to pull it out because there's other stuff on top of it. But I've also got some rice in there. I got this bag of rice today. I'm going to add this in here. This is just a 2-pound bag of white rice, long grain. I got this at Family Dollar. Pretty sure this was $1. It was in the Dollar Tree section of Family Dollar. Rice is cheap and it's easy to store. I just store it just in the bag and throw it in here. And like I said, it's good for years. I've read stuff. Some people say that there might be bugs in the rice, and if you store the rice just like this, you come to get it a couple years later and the bugs have eaten it up. I've never experienced that, but I guess it's possible. So what they suggest is if you're going to store rice like this in the original bag, is put it in the deep freeze for 24 hours. Then that will kill any bugs that are in there. Then you take it out and you put it on the counter for 24 hours. That will allow any eggs to hatch. Then you put it back into the deep freeze for another 24 hours. That will kill any bugs that hatch. Then you put it back on the counter for another 24 hours. That will allow it to, the temperature to equalize, and for any moisture and stuff that's built in to evaporate off. Then you store it. So that's a process you could do. I just store it. I store white rice. I've been told this stuff can last 20 years properly stored without going bad. I've never stored it that long, but several years obviously is good. Brown rice, not so much, because I've heard there's an ingredient in brown rice or something in it. I read it years ago. I think it's sugar, but they said it will go rancid after about a year. The nice thing about rancidity is your nose is good at picking it up. So you're going to smell if something's rancid and you're not going to eat it. But for long-term storage, I just use the white rice. It doesn't quite have the nutrition value of the brown, but if you're hungry, you're going to eat it. So, and a lot of beans. Now, to go along with the beans, I like to store some of this Jiffy corn muffin mix. I also just have cornmeal and flour stored, but I just throw some of these mixes in here for making cornbread. If I'm gonna eat a lot of beans, I like cornbread to go with it. Those dry mixes, as long as they stay dry, they last for years and years and years. I also buy a lot of these things, these Knorr pasta sides. These are usually $1, $1.25. This is Alfredo broccoli. It's a dried mix. All you have to do is add boiling water to it, and it's got noodles, it's got sauce. It's a meal in itself, and so I'll throw some of those in, and I figured do that, maybe throw a little meat in with it. That's a good meal for myself and my wife. One thing that I've got plenty of in here, and my wife hates it when I bring it in the house. If you're not picking up on this, my wife's not a prepper. She definitely has the attitude of just run down the store and get some more, and is macaroni and cheese. I store this stuff up. Macaroni is great. Spaghetti, pasta is, I read years ago that pasta is like the original survival food, prepping food. The Italians did that. They grew a lot of wheat. Wheat's very hard to store over the winter time, long-term storage. They try to keep it dry and to keep it from, getting moist and ruining. So they made pasta, and pasta is literally so dried out, especially if you put it in a jar or something where it's sealed up. You can keep it for 10 years and come back and cook it and can't tell a bit of difference as long as it doesn't have any moisture or any bugs that get into it. So, macaroni and cheese for 50 cents, that's a meal. It's really a good meal, especially if you throw a little meat, a little spam in with it or something. So, when things got bad in 2019, I noticed besides the toilet paper disappearing off the shelf was macaroni and cheese. It disappeared so fast. So I've got a few boxes of that put away. Along similar lines, I'll go ahead and throw out the ramen noodles. I have some. I've got a case in the other room. I just bought these this morning. This was $1 for 5 packs. I'm going to go ahead and throw it in here. I don't buy a lot of ramen noodles. I will eat them. My wife despises them. And there's a lot of stuff I buy and I pack away. And she says, I don't know why you're going to buy that because I'm never going to eat it. And I always tell her, if you get hungry enough, you will. And so I do throw some ramen noodles in there. It's cheap. It's a filling food. This is powdered milk. I like to buy these little packs. They're real good sealed up tight packs, and they're $1. And if you get them at like Family Dollar in the little Dollar Tree section that they usually have, you can usually get these for $1. I'll buy these and just throw a few in here. Milk is good to have, and the powdered milk once again, it just lasts a long, long time. And speaking of dates and how long things last, that's something that, I thought everybody just knew this, but it's not common knowledge if you don't kind of mess with this stuff. If you look at dates on things, there's 2 different kinds of dates. Some of them are an expiration date, and you usually see that like on dairy products. You'll see that, and then you'll see a sell-by date, and that's a date that the store is supposed to sell it by that date. You see a lot on meats and stuff. And then you have a best if used by date. And what that means is that's a date that the manufacturer puts on, and they say if you use the product before that date, that it's going to be just as good and fresh and taste the same as when you bought it, when it was new. So if they manufacture it today and they have a 1-year best use date, they're saying if you eat it 11.5 months from now, it'll taste just as good as when you bought it if you ate it today. And then after that, there's no guarantees. It can start to degrade. Doesn't mean it's bad. You could eat it 2 years and it can still taste as good. Or some stuff, maybe the taste might change a little bit or the coloring might change a little bit. But it's still good. I was reading this prepper thing online. These guys had rice, they had 5-gallon buckets of rice that they rotated in their basement and stored, and they would eat it and then refill it, put it back. And one guy got knocked out of the rotation and they didn't realize it. And the rice it was 18 years old. They ate it and they said it tasted fine, but it was yellow. It had changed from white to yellow. Kind of the coloring had changed a little bit, but it didn't affect the taste whatsoever, and it was good, and they still ate it. So when you're looking at dates on food, see if it's a use by date, a best used by. I've seen videos on YouTube. There's YouTube videos that people just eat old food, and they're actually pretty popular. These guys are making money just from eating old food. And I've seen them eat canned foods from 10, 15 years ago, and they still are okay. So a lot of stuff, like I said, I'm storing it. Everything I'm putting in this tote is good for at least 2 years. It's 2021 now. I'm making sure all the best use dates are by 2023. But if it goes beyond that, I don't really care. I check this stuff every year. I kind of go through all my food that's stored, and I eat stuff that's getting close to out of date, and I buy fresh stuff and put it in there. But as I said, if we can get through the next couple of years, I'll feel pretty good about that, because I'm afraid things are going to get bad. So that's about dates. So the kind of stuff I have in here already. Corned beef hash. I love this stuff. It's beef, it's got potatoes in it. The best use date on this is 2024. This stuff is usually at least 3 years. So I store some of this stuff. I really like it. Vegetables, cans of mixed vegetables, diced tomatoes. We like tomatoes in a lot of stuff. You can make sauces with it. It's spaghetti sauce, eat with pasta and stuff. I just got a few of these. I saw these in the store. It's tamales and chicken and hot sauce. I like tamales, and these are actually pretty good. That's a pretty good meal. Mix that with some rice, and that's a good meal right there. Kind of mix it up, do something different. Let's see, where are we at here? Spam. I like Spam. It's meat. There's not a lot of meats that you can store this long. And you can store rice and beans, and that gets a little old and repetitive. I want some meat in my diet. So I get Spam. I usually don't actually buy Spam because of the price. I buy more of the generic stuff. My wife hates anything but Spam, so she'll eat some fried Spam. But if I get any of the other kind of luncheon loaves and stuff, she doesn't like it. So she's kind of giving in on her when I buy stuff and bring in more food. She's like, more prepping food. But she said, quit buying the cheap stuff. Just get Spam if you're going to buy it. So I bought a couple cans of Spam to put in here just to make her happy. But what she doesn't know is I also bought some cheap stuff. So I get these at Dollar Tree. I like these. This is their luncheon loaf. It's good stuff. The best use date on this is December of 2025. So basically 2026. And so you can get a good 5 years out of this stuff. And these, I like these because, well, first they're $1, but they're smaller than a can of Spam. So for 2 people, make a meal. You make some of this and mix it with some rice or something, or make a box of macaroni and cheese, and then fry this up and mix it in with it. Let's add some protein to it, add some flavor, and it's the little smaller cans are a little more economical, I think, and easier to store. So I've got some of those that I'm putting in here. Let's see what else I got. More corn muffin mix. This is ox and palm corned beef. I like corned beef. I already got the corned beef hash. I told you that. I just like these cans of corned beef. This was from Dollar Tree. No, this wasn't from Dollar Tree. This was from another store that just flew out of my brain. I'll think of it. Anyway, I buy this stuff too. Once again, this best use date's December of 2025. So, good solid 4 years on this, just for the best use date. And then it'll last longer than that. Big Lots. That's where I got that from. So I like these. I've got a few of these in here. I buy this stuff, and it's pretty good. Some more corned beef hash, which I like. I look for bargains, sales. My grocery store I go to, let's go Save a Lot, and they have this. It's IGA sweet corn. I don't know where they got this from because it's not an IGA store, but they had a whole pallet of it, so they must have just gotten a deal in it. But they had a good price on it. This best use date is December of 2023, so a good 2 years. And this was 50 cents a can, so I went ahead and bought a couple of cans of this. I like to have some vegetables, so corn. I also like to get something a little sweet in every once in a while. So I bought some of these the other day. They're fried apples, canned fried apples, which I like. And that's something to kind of mix it up, almost like a dessert thing. And this is good for 2 years. The best use on this is 2023. So get some of that as well. Mashed potatoes, the powdered potatoes. Once again, as long as they stay dry, they pretty much last forever. And they're cheap and pretty handy to keep around. So I just do a box of these in here too, and those will come in handy. Some more corned beef hash. You're seeing a lot of canned foods. I've got a lot of stuff already in here that's not canned, like beans and stuff. And I'm not stacking the cans on top of it. I actually have the beans and stuff on one side, and I'm putting all the cans over on this side. These are something I got the other day. It's just Velveeta cheese sauce. This had a nice long shelf date on it too. Kind of hard to read these, and I don't have my reading glasses on, so I don't remember. But like I said, I'm sure it's 2023 because everything I was putting in here is good for at least 2 years. And I just thought these are $1. I got about 4 of them and threw them in here. I thought these are really handy. I mean, you could just take some plain rice and put some cheese in it. Cheese and rice is good. If you have any kind of pasta, just some spaghetti or something, and break it up and put this in. It's basically macaroni and cheese. And so I just thought this, or broccoli or anything, any kind of vegetable, you can put this on. So for $1, Sealed up in this nice packet. I'm sure this will last for many, many years. But like I said, the shelf life's like 2 years on it. So I have seen something similar. Excuse me. I guess they still do it. When I was in the Army, you know, we had a little cheese pack like this that we would put on crackers in our MREs. And I have seen videos of guys on YouTube opening those up that are 30 years old, and the cheese is still good and the crackers are still good and they still eat them. So I'm guessing in this kind of a retort pouch sealed up well, this I'm sure would last probably 10 years and be just fine. So this is the first time I've ever stored these. I'm just going to try them if we need them. Like I said, I'm afraid we're going to need this in the next couple of years. So these things are great. I've got a few of these. They're cooked hams. This one is a Bristol brand. They used to sell some called DAP, D-A-P. I think I've still seen those around. All the dollar stores have these. I get these at Family Dollar. You can get them at Dollar Tree. It's ham, and it's already cooked. You can eat it, just open a can and just cook it right out of here, or you can take it, slice it up. You can eat it cold. You can literally open this, slice it, put it on a piece of bread and eat it. You can also fry it, bake it. You can do about anything with it. It's you know, it's a processed ham, but they're really good, and they're not expensive. I think this is like $3.25 for this, and it's 16 ounces. It's a pound, you know, pound of ham. And the dates on these are just phenomenal. This one is January of 2026. So good solid 5 years on these, shelf life, and inexpensive. And you know, it's about the same as a price as a can of Spam as far as price, but more weight, 16 ounces instead of 12, and it's not quite as salty and stuff as the Spam, a little bit different taste. But I always have some of those stored away, and just about every tote I have one of them. Got a few up in the cupboard, and like I said, I rotate them. I've got a few up in the cupboard I was looking at today. They're good till 2023. I've had them for a couple of years up there, but I'll keep an eye on that. When they start getting close, take them out and we'll eat them and fry them up for breakfast or something. Keep them up, mix them with some eggs. They're really good, and I'll buy a couple more and throw back up there. So, what else we got here? This one. Wanted to talk about it. Also, this is some instant oatmeal. Oatmeal lasts forever. We had a big, just one of those big Quaker oat things up above our sink that we just didn't use for years and years and years. And one day my wife decided she wanted some oatmeal and looked up there and we had that. And I mean, literally, it was like 8 years old and had not been stored anywhere particularly good. It was up in a cabinet above our stove, which, you know, gets kind of hot and greasy, and it was fine. She cooked it up and it tasted perfectly normal. It was fine. So oatmeal is really good for storing, because think about it, it's already all dried out. Anything that's completely dried out like that, like pasta, oatmeal is going to last a long time. So this was $1 for some packs of instant oatmeal. I figured this is real easy to make. I could do some hot water. You got it. So I throw a few of these in here. You know, that's a good meal for breakfast, especially. You could eat that anytime. A couple of special items here I'm going to talk about. Canning. I do can, and I'm talking to somebody today about learning how to make ghee, G-H-E-E, clarified butter, which I'm going to talk more about here in a second. But I canned this last year. This is pear sauce. So like applesauce, but I make it with pears. And I put a little maraschino cherry in there for a little cherry taste. That's why it's got that reddish, pinkish kind of tint to it. I got a few of these jars in here I canned last year. This stuff is really good. I have a big pear tree in my yard, and we got a lot of pears out of it. And I'm trying to figure out what to do with them, because I hate them. They just sit out there and we run over them with the lawnmower and they go to waste. They're not the kind of pears that are really good for just eating. They're good for like cooking and stuff, but we just don't do a whole lot with it. So I said last year I need to start doing something, and I decided to make this pear sauce. And this turned out really nice. This was a good idea. And probably, I might make some more this year, but the tree's not looking too good. I'm not going to get the pears like I used to do. This has been a really bad year for garden stuff. But the reason I wanted that, the pear sauce, is, you know, it's fresh and it's something that's cheap. It's easy for me to make because I've got a ton of pears out there. But in cooking, when you're dealing with prepping and stuff, you know, a lot of this stuff mixes and stuff. And I have also down the bottom of this, I have some flour and some meal stored in here. Flour is great. You can make a non-leavened bread really easy. Pretty much just flour and water. You can mix it up and fry it, make like a Navajo kind of fry bread. Excuse me. You can bake it, make like a flatbread. You can make biscuits. There's a lot you can do with it. A lot of recipes and stuff, if you're going to bake something, requires eggs. And if you've got chickens, you can get eggs. That's great. But if you don't, one of the alternatives you can use is applesauce. And I learned this years ago in baking. If you don't have egg, you can take a tablespoon of applesauce and substitute that for egg in a baking recipe. And it does the same thing. It's a binder, so it binds the flour and stuff together, and it also provides some fat. And that's what it's there for. And applesauce will work just as well as an egg in a recipe like that. So I thought, well, if applesauce will work, so will pear sauce. And so that's why I've got the pear sauce is back. So in SHTF's scenario, if I'm having to go to this box for food, then I've got some canned pear sauce in there that I can use in place of egg. Just, open a can, take a spoonful, and that's in place of an egg. So I keep pear sauce. Might want to suggest you might want to have some applesauce by for that. That's a good use for it. Besides the powdered milk, this is something that I get from Dollar Tree. This is a quart of milk. This is 2%. They've got regular, got 1% skim. They've got whatever type of milk you want. This is made by Gosner. This is a really highly filtered milk, and it's stored in these containers, and you can store it without refrigeration. And it's got a pretty good shelf life on it. Just the best use date is, this one is 2022. And I keep these in the kitchen. I don't store these in the bins, but so this is a year, a little over a year actually, for this when you get them new. And that's the best use by date. They could very well last longer than that. I understand that the military uses this a lot. They'll ship this out with rations and stuff, not individual C-rats, but with field kitchens and stuff, they like this stuff. And it's got supposedly a very long shelf life on it. I've never stored it for more than a year, but it's kind of handy to have. Like I said, I usually, if I'm going to store milk, I store powdered milk, but I have bought a few of these, and you can keep it in the cupboard, and then when you go to use it, to store it in the fridge to chill it, and then it just tastes like regular milk. It doesn't taste any difference to me. And you get these a quart for $1 at Dollar Tree. So it's kind of a handy way to store milk, especially if you don't like the taste of powdered milk, because this tastes like regular milk. It doesn't taste like powdered milk. So this is something pretty cheap and easy to store. You can get this and easily store it for a year. I wouldn't hesitate to go longer than that. That's one thing about milk is I think we've probably all experienced spoiled milk in our lives. So if you have milk and you're not sure about it, it's pretty, your nose and your taste buds will tell you pretty quick if there's something wrong with it. So I wouldn't hesitate if I had that stored for a couple of years to open it up and take a whiff and see what I thought about it, and wouldn't hesitate drinking it if I felt like it smelled okay and tasted okay. So, but last thing I'm going to talk about, this is something I don't see people deal with very much when you're dealing with food prepping and storing food. I have watched a lot of videos of places in other parts of the world that are going bad. For example, Libya. After Gaddafi fell, things got very bad there. Venezuela for the last few years, things have been horrible, and people there are dropping dead and losing weight left and right from starvation. And I see this common thread running through all these videos, and when I watch them, I look at them as education videos, saying, that could be us. I could be in that situation someday. So I want to see what they're doing and how they're adapting and what they're storing and prepping. These aren't people that have, food stored in, Mylar bags and 20 years of freeze-dried food and stuff. They're just literally going to the store and trying to get stuff and trying to store what they can and eating what they can. A lot of them don't have electricity. A lot of them who have fridges and stuff have had to sell them just because there's electricity's only on for a few hours a day anyway, and they're trying to desperately survive and get money. So if they've had a fridge, they've sold it and they can't refrigerate anything. And one of the common themes that I see is cooking oil. They're always trying to get cooking oil, and if you think about it, and say, well, I'm going to go out and catch me a fish, you know, or I'm going to go and kill a squirrel. And well, how are you going to cook that? Because a lot of stuff, if you're going to fry up some squirrel, you're going to have oil. You're going to have some sort of oil, cooking oil. A lot of recipes and stuff involve fats. They want you to put, you know, a teaspoon of butter or a teaspoon of oil or something in it. So cooking oil is pretty common. Now in Libya, I'm not an expert on Libyan politics. I have no idea anything about it, but I'm guessing it's some sort of a socialist kind of country like Venezuela, because the government controls the prices on a lot of stuff. And one of the things that Libya was keeping the price control on was cooking oil, because so many people needed it, and so the government was subsidizing it to keep the price low. But that's one of the very few things that they were. And inflation got so bad over there that you just couldn't buy food. Because what would happen is, you know, the grocery store would buy this can of Spam, and it would cost $2, and they would sell it for $3.50. So they'd make $1.50. All right. They'd sell it, and then the next week, due to inflation, when they went to buy it, it cost $4. Well, you know, they sold the last one for $3.50. They only made $1.50. So now they got to buy this can for $4. They don't even have that much. They've got to borrow or buy less of something else so they can buy this can of Spam for $4. Well, then they've got to mark it up. You know, inflation's gone up. So just to get their money back, they have to mark it up to $8 to sell it. So they make $4, but due to inflation, that $4 is worthless, because next week when they go to buy it, it's $10. And that's what kept happening. And it got to where the grocery stores finally, especially the little ones, just said, we can't buy any more inventory because we don't have the cash to buy the inventory because of inflation going on. And one of the few things that they did manage to kind of keep on the shelf somewhat was cooking oil, because the government was subsidizing and keeping the price down. And there was a huge demand for it. But people who are starving or get pretty enterprising, and they realize that they could buy the cooking oil at a cheap price and then drive it across the border. And forgive me for my geopolitics over there, but I think it was to Syria. But they would buy it and then drive it across the border to Syria and then sell it to the Syrians and make money off of it, so that they had money to buy food and stuff with. So once some black, you know, marketers figured that out, they started buying up every bit of cooking oil they can get their hands on, because that's one of the items that they could buy at a controlled price and then take across the border and smuggle it and sell it. And so that made it even harder for common people to find cooking oil, which made it very hard on them to make food. So that's an area that a lot of people I don't see talk about when they're prepping. You really can't store it because it turns rancid fairly quickly. So what I've been storing for the last few years, what I've been getting into is I'm buying shortening. I buy these little containers of Crisco vegetable shortening, and I store these. Now, the best use date on this is 2023, so it fits my criteria to go into this, but I'm hoping it would last a lot longer than that. I really don't know. I've not really read anything about how long you can store Crisco before it turns rancid. It is one of those things that will turn rancid, so you can smell it, so you can tell if it's bad. That's why I buy little containers instead of like a big gallon container, because if it does turn rancid, I don't want to have to throw it away. If I got 3 of these, maybe 2 turns rancid, but 1's okay. So I try to buy the smaller containers, and plus they're cheaper. That's what I've been looking into, the ghee, the clarified butter. That's a product you can take pure butter and clarify it, and from what I was told today, you're removing the sugar, and so lactose intolerant people can tolerate it, and changes the flavor a little bit, but you can store it, and you can just, if you're just cooking it and you heat your jars and lids in the oven while you're cooking it, then you take the hot jar, hot liquid, hot lid, put it all together, it will pull a seal, and you can store that for 2 years. If you actually can it like you would can meat and put it in a pressure canner, you can store it for longer. So that is something that I've never fooled with. I just kind of found out about it today. One of my friends in the group that I'm in had mentioned it the other day, and I had asked her some more information about it today, and she kind of filled me in. So she's kind of piqued my interest. So that's something that I want to look into, is maybe canning some clarified butter. and putting it back in jars, canning jars, so that I'll have some of that back, and I could use that for cooking oil, for cooking if I needed to, or putting it in recipes and stuff as oil. Some other things, just some little tidbits that are popping in my head, randomly. I've kind of shown you some of the stuff that I store, and this isn't all of it. Like I said, it's just a kind of a cross section. The kinds of things that I'm looking for and the kind of things that I avoid. So some of the things I avoid, nuts. You think like peanuts, something, big bag of peanuts or something would be great. Protein and stuff, and it is, but nuts don't store well. They do turn rancid, and I don't know exactly how long, but they don't store well for the long term. I've heard that peanut butter can store pretty well. I personally don't stock it. I have some peanut butter powder that I bought that you can actually reconstitute with water and turn it back into peanut butter. I just got some of that at a pallet store one time and bought some cheap, and I keep it. And I've got that if I ever wanted peanut butter. I guess I could mix some up, and I think the dry powder would last a lot longer. But it's not something that I usually prep and store, because I figure it's a nut product. It's not going to last very long. Stuff like that I don't store. Like I said, nuts. I wanted to show you one other thing that I'm a big fan of. I don't usually prep it because I usually eat it, but I'm going to get it and show you. This is Swedish crisp bread. This happens to be Wasa brand, W-A-S-A. This is a, they call it crisp bread. It's like a rye bread that's cooked, and it looks like this. It's a little thing. It's more like a cracker. It's like a thick cracker. I like this stuff. I eat a lot of this stuff. It's a whole grain, so the carbs and stuff aren't as bad as it would with like a processed flour product. But this is, it doesn't taste like it, but it's basically stale bread. It's bread that's, dried out. And this was like the original survival food in Scandinavia. I've read about this, and they would bake this, and some of it comes in, I've got some stored in a tin in there in another container. It's round, it's kind of big, and it's round, it's got a hole in the middle of it. Almost like a bundt cake or something, but of course it's flat with that hole in the middle. And they used to bake it that way in Sweden. And then what they would do is, in the rafters of their houses, they would run these long poles, and they would run that pole through the middle of that crisp bread and like stack it up and then hang it up in the rafters, and they would have that hung up in the rafters, and they would just kind of break off a piece and pull it down as they needed to eat it. And they would store their grains that way all winter, and that's really good food. This crisp bread, there's a brand of it, I think it's called Sailor Boy. I haven't actually had it, but it's a crisp bread. It's made in Virginia, but in Alaska, and maybe some of y'all are from Alaska, and maybe you tell me I'm crazy, but this is what I'd read. But in Alaska, there's a lot of small planes, and one of the regulations on the plane is you have to have a supply of emergency food on the plane. In case you crash, you've got to have some food to survive on. And so one of the really cheap and lightweight and easy things to carry is this crisp bread. And so there's a brand of it, that Sailor Bread brand, that comes in a metal tin, and it's crisp bread that's stored like that, and it's very popular with pilots and stuff in Alaska. And I was reading something online, and there was a guy up there who had a cabin, and he said he stored some of that in a PVC pipe, like a 4-inch PVC pipe with caps on the end, and he had stored a bunch of stuff and stored some of that food on it and buried it underneath his cabin up there, because it's like one of these remote hunting cabins. So when he's gone, people will come in and raid it and do whatever. And he couldn't really store food because somebody's just going to eat it up. So that's why he stored it, was burying it in that. And he said he had that under there for 20 years, and he dug it up and opened it and ate it, and it was just as fresh as the day that he buried it. So crisp bread is inexpensive, and it's good, and it's crunchy. It kind of replaces that bread in your diet if you're not eating a lot of bread, and it's good for you, but very healthy, heart healthy stuff with the whole grains, and it lasts forever. Basically, as long as it stays dry, it's good. So that is something that I like to put back and store some of, because it's got a very, very long shelf life on it, and it kind of fills a place in your, because you notice you can't really store a lot of bread. There's some canned breads and stuff that I've had. There there's a company that makes a canned bread, and I can't remember what it's called, but it's literally a metal can, and they bake a little loaf of bread in it. It's a brown, kind of a sweet bread. I've had them, but they're just kind of mushy. They're not the most delicious thing in the world. It's not something you're gonna make a sandwich out of, and it's kind of expensive. So lots of bread is cheap, and I store it. So that's a prepping tip of something that you can put in here. And I have some stored away in another container. I just haven't put any in here. But that's about all I can think of right now. I think, did I miss anything? Oh, there is a can here I missed. This is not a big deal. A roast beef with gravy. I might have put another one in there. I don't remember if I mentioned this or not. But once again, another canned meat. This one has a best use date of 2023. It's a couple of years at least. That was another, I think that was a Family Dollar thing. It was like $1, maybe $2 for that. So another different type of meat that you can store. So that's about all I've got today. I hope you learned something from it. And if you got any comments, I'm sure I'm probably going to get a bunch of shit comments, to be honest with you, but I don't care. I thought about even turning the comments off, but if I help one person, I'm happy with that. So if you have any suggestions, hit me up in the comments. I'll read them all. I always do. You can send me an email. I always put it down in the links. But I understand about the whole, you don't have to tell me all about Mylar, this and that, and food grade cans and storing stuff for 20 years and stuff. I know all that. Believe me, I've read about it all. I've done this for a lot of years, but I'm not really looking to store stuff for 20 years. Like I said, if I can store stuff from 2 to 5 years, I'm happy right now, and pretty economical. Like I said. Okay, folks, so I finished shooting that video, and I was editing it, and I remembered something that I wanted to include, so I'm going to shoot this addendum. But I want to talk about cooking a little bit. So that was one of the things that came up when my friend and I were talking the other day about how to cook. If you live in an area where you have neighbors close in a city or something, and it's nice to have a gas barbecue grill, or you can go out in the yard and start a fire and cook over it. But if you do that, if you're cooking outside like that, it's pretty obvious you have food to other people. So you might want to be a little bit more clandestine. So what I have is a Primus stove. That's Primus. Primus is a brand name. It's now owned by somebody else, but I read books about, people bought Primus stoves up on Mount Everest. They've been around forever. And they make little camping stoves, and that's what this is. It's a little single burner camping stove. It works with these little single propane tanks, and the way it works, this one's super simple, but it's very, very well made. It's 2 pieces. There's a base that the tank sits down inside of, and then this head screws on the top of the tank, and it just gives you a single burner. And it's heavy enough and stable enough you can set a frying pan on top of it, or a 2-quart pot, and boil water, fry something, heat something up, and they're really quite versatile, and they're inexpensive. I looked this morning. I've had this for 15 years probably, so I wanted to check before I said anything for this video. So I went on eBay and looked, and I saw several Primus stoves on there that could be purchased for $20 to $25, depending on how the auctions go. But so it's not expensive, and this gives you an option where you could literally set this up in your kitchen or on your dining room table and cook inside your house, and people wouldn't know you were cooking. And there's accessories here on the end of the box here. It's got a list of accessories. So there's a cable and some adapters and stuff that you can buy, or hoses, where instead of using these little tanks, you can mount it and run it off of a big propane tank that will give you a lot more life and stuff on it. I have thought about getting one of those to use like a barbecue tank or something, but I've just got some of these little tanks, and that doesn't use a lot of gas. They last quite a bit. I don't know how long one would last on a tank. They might say on here, I don't know. I've never looked, but kind of a handy little thing to have, and give you an option to do some cooking during a bad situation where you don't have to worry about nosy neighbors knowing that you have food. So just give you an option. So I'm going to wrap this up now. God bless you all. Stay safe.